Hey, welcome everyone to yet another Leader Factor Live. Happy Friday. Hope you all have had a wonderful week and are getting ready for a weekend that is hopefully well deserved. So, Tim, thank
Yeah,
you for being with us. You're back.
I am back. I'm back from Brazil, and it's good to be here. But I do want to say Brazil was a fantastic experience, and it made me think a lot about the distinction between diversity and inclusion. We talk a lot about that,
Yeah.
where diversity is a matter of makeup and composition, and inclusion is a matter of belief and behaviors.
Hmm.
And they're not the same. Now, they're related, but they're not the same. And so often in an organization, we can have a lot of diversity, but we don't have inclusion. And that means that we haven't finished the job. We haven't created a deeply inclusive environment. I learned a lot from the Brazilians about inclusion,
Hmm. What
about
was poignant to you?
just simple inclusive behaviors,
Hmm.
being responsive, being warm. Um, those little things make such a difference. And when those become the norms and the patterns, you feel that you're in an inclusive environment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I thank the Brazilians for teaching us that. I think they could teach a lot of societies a lot about inclusion.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And tell us where you're from. If you're joining the stream today, we'd love to know where you're tuning in from. I know last week we had a few dozen countries represented. And so if you're just tuning in, we would love to know where you're coming from. Okay, so we have a few announcements to make today, as well as hopefully a short but somewhat thorough treatment of a concept that we've been talking about a little bit on LinkedIn this week that we want to dive into today about contribution and consumption, the human need to make a difference. So, this is going to be a conversation about stage three, contributor safety, and just a short piece inside that stage. So, on the announcement side of things, we have an exciting announcement to make. The community has been very loud since we stopped doing the webinars. We took a break, we took a breather, we'll call it that,
Yeah.
from the webinars for a couple months. But it sounds like you all want the webinars to get back on the calendar. And so that's something that we're going to be doing. We weren't planning on it until next year, but we've gone ahead and put one on the calendar for November. So that's going to be November 19th. And we are going to talk about a fascinating topic. So the registration for that should go live fairly soon. That will be available on the website, leaderfactor.com, and you'll be getting it in the newsletter as well. Those go out on Wednesdays. So I imagine that registration for that will probably go out in the newsletter next Wednesday. So
What's our topic, Junior? What are we going to tackle?
we are going to tackle, I can't remember off the top of my head. You put me on the spot. I was trying to avoid it, but you put me on the spot. So I can't remember.
We're going to talk
I
about
know. I remember. It's
engagement.
engagement. It's
Yeah.
engagement.
We're going to talk about the relationship between engagement and psychological safety. Which one is the lead indicator? Which one is the lag indicator? Which one comes first? Which
That's
one
right.
is the consequence of the other? This
Yep.
is so fascinating because organizations spend so much time and energy and money on employee engagement. But guess what? The research says that employee engagement is a consequence. It's a consequence in many ways of psychological safety. So, psychological safety is further upstream in the causal chain. Isn't that interesting? We're going to talk about that. I
Yep.
think you'll
So
find
we'll
it interesting.
we'll dive into that. I think it's
Yeah.
going to be a really good webinar. Thank you everybody for tuning in. So David from Idaho, thank you for being here. Dan from Indiana, Alejandra from Mexico, Nick from somewhere that I can't read. That's a language I don't speak.
Whoa.
But thank you for being here anyway. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in to the content for today. So the content from today comes from some engagement in LinkedIn from one of Tim's posts. So Tim posted a poll this week, which is a pretty interesting one. In life generally, do you find more personal satisfaction in contribution or consumption? And we had a hunch. We had a hunch what the answer to this would be, but we didn't know for certain.
No, we
And
didn't
so
know for sure. We had a
we,
hypothesis.
yeah,
We could guess, but we couldn't guess the statistics. We
yeah.
couldn't guess the what the data would say, right?
Yeah, so the data has spoken now,
Yeah.
and the response was overwhelming. So I think that many of us probably would guess, if we really think about it carefully, that we and people generally find more satisfaction in contribution. But it was 98 to 2.
Yeah.
98 to 2.
Yeah.
That's overwhelming. Like that is so compelling. It's more compelling and more polar than I expected it to
No,
be.
it surprised
98%.
us. It surprised
98%
all of us. Yeah.
of people said that they find more satisfaction in contribution than consumption. We also, looks like we got Sweden, UK, Slovakia, Australia. Thank you all for being here.
Fantastic.
So, contribution and consumption. So, maybe we define those a little bit, Tim, give some context. So, when you say contribution, it may seem straightforward, but what do you mean?
I mean, creating and delivering value of some kind to whatever's happening,
Yeah.
right? Wherever you are, whatever your context is, whatever your situation is, you are making it better. You are adding something. There's a net add coming from you. And it could be at work, at school, at home, with family, with friends, any social collective.
Yeah.
You are adding to the experience, the quality and the value of the experience. That's contribution.
Are these results surprising to any of you in the chat? Go ahead and let us know what you think about these results. I think that they're very fascinating. That's probably the way that I like to look at this the best, Tim, is am I net positive
Yeah,
or negative?
right.
And generally, in a social setting, am I giving more than I'm taking? And it could be of attention. It could just be, am I listening more than I'm speaking?
Mhm.
Right? That is a net add
Yeah,
to the collective. If it's at work, if it's in society, if it's in the marketplace, there are many domains in which there should be some sort of give and take, some
yeah,
sort of reciprocity.
yeah,
And our aim should be, or at least it looks like people find more satisfaction in having a net add, a net positive impact in whatever they're engaged in. And I think that that's part of the cool thing about this topic is it's universally applicable. We find ourselves in all sorts of situations, and what is our posture? Is it offensive? Are we trying to contribute or are we trying to consume? So let's talk about consumption for a moment.
yeah.
What do you mean by consumption?
Well, let's qualify it, Junior, because consumption is not inherently bad or wrong. We're not saying that at all.
Not at
We
all.
need to consume in order to live, in order
Yeah.
to survive. We have certain requirements,
Yep.
right? As human beings, we have physical requirements, we have emotional requirements, we have social requirements, we have innate human needs that need to be satisfied. So it's not wrong and it's not bad. We're not saying that at all. The question is, where do you find more personal satisfaction? Yes, you do need to consume. But as Junior said, the results to this question are overwhelming.
Yeah.
That people find more inherent, deeper personal satisfaction in contribution.
Yep.
But we still have what we're saying is we acknowledge the fact that we have to consume in order to live, in order to survive, in order to maintain our existence. But it's not the source of deep satisfaction generally for humans. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
I think that one of the things that struck me this week as I was watching the poll, I kind of kept tabs on it throughout the week, was it started to show such overwhelming results. But what I then asked is the natural next question, which is what do most people do, or what do people do on this spectrum? And
Yeah,
how is the general population oriented and positioned relative to these two things? Are 98% of people oriented actively, consistently toward contribution? I don't think we can say that with such overwhelming conviction,
I don't
right?
either. No.
It would seem that while we find much more satisfaction in contribution, we
Yeah.
don't do 98% contribution.
Right.
So why is that? And the answer might be fairly obvious, but like, let's put it to the group. What do you all think? Do you have any thoughts about why so many of us consume maybe even more than we contribute,
Yeah.
or are positioned or oriented in a way to take advantage of what's going on around us, to be the one that's taking and not the one that's giving?
So there's
Why
the
is that?
question, you said it, Junior. There's the question that we all need to reflect on. Am I a net contributor
Yeah,
or am I a net consumer?
yeah, yeah,
That's a very, very important question to reflect on. Take personal inventory on that question.
yeah,
What is the pattern of your life? How do you allocate your time, your scarce resources, your time, your energy, your attention, your money? Do you allocate your scarce resources in a way that's consistent with the view that you value contribution more than consumption? So, Junior, to your point, some people are saying that, but are they really doing it?
yeah. And Kurt put it very simply: it's certainly easier to consume than to contribute.
Yeah. Okay.
It, plain and simple.
Yeah.
It's much easier.
Yeah.
Contribution requires, well, let's ask the question, what does contribution require? It requires at least a combination of some of those four things that you mentioned, right? Time, energy, attention, and money. And it's much easier to be on the receiving end of those four things. It's also true that contribution has much less to do with being in the spotlight. And I think that that's interesting. Contribution, we're saying, let's take the emphasis off of me and put it into impact and value to the world. Or, and maybe to the world sounds too Herculean, but it could be just a conversation,
Yeah.
you and I on the phone. Maybe I'm just listening more, asking a few pointed questions and supporting what you're doing. It could be that simple. So
Another
I do
thing,
think that
another
it's,
another
go ahead.
thing to consider, Junior, as it relates to contribution is that contribution is normally associated with more uncertainty. If you contribute, is there a guaranteed return? No, often no. Probably most of the time, no. It requires faith and
Yeah,
trust and confidence that there will be some reciprocity coming
yeah,
back to you,
yeah,
but you're going to contribute not knowing that.
yep,
And it's okay. You're going to be okay with that. And what I have found, the people who are net contributors and they demonstrate that pattern in their lives, they don't even worry about what the return's going to be. They
mhm,
just contribute and and it's going to work out, right?
yeah. I think one of the other angles is that when you do contribute, now you're subject to evaluation, right?
Yeah, there's
And
another one. There's
yeah,
another one.
there's another one. It's like, well, your contribution is something. It's something of substance. And do people like it? Do they not like it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
you're
think that's
subject to criticism versus standing on the sidelines
yeah,
and not getting into the game where you might get bruised and bloodied
yeah,
and you don't have to sweat with
yeah,
everybody. So
yeah,
it's a lot easier to just kind of be on the periphery and even maybe take shots at those that are trying to do the hard work out there.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want to go to another point in the same vein. Does anyone in the chat today know who this is? I'd be surprised, frankly. I don't know that I would know at a glance. Does anyone know who this woman is? Any guesses? Any ideas? There's somebody out there who's taking it and reverse image searching it, I bet. So, does this help at all?
There we go.
The lamp. That might be a giveaway. So, this is Florence Nightingale. And I want to talk about Florence Nightingale in the context of contribution and consumption. See, Jerry got it right. Um, her life is very interesting to me. And I've been learning a little bit more about it over the last week or so. And she was born in 1820 in Florence. That's where her name comes from. So Tuscany, Italy, that's where
Mhm.
she was born. And she was born to what we could probably call an aristocrat family, very well connected, very well to do, and was born into what many of us today would call privilege. She had a very privileged environment. Her family moved back to England in 1821, shortly after she was born. And I won't go into too much of the specifics regarding her life, but one of the things that I found most interesting about her life is she had an internal battle for many years, and it could be boiled down to this consumption or contribution concept because there was tremendous pressure and tremendous ease to stay where she was and partake of the fruits of her environment and privilege. She could have stayed an aristocrat, if you will,
Mhm.
forever until the day that she died.
Just living
She
on her estate, right,
just
Junior?
living on her estate.
Yeah.
And she had the opportunity or inclination toward medicine in some regard early on, but she put it off. And she felt called to move into medicine over time, but didn't and didn't and didn't. For a period of 16 years, I came to find out.
I didn't
Had
know that.
Yeah, and that's one of the most interesting things that I've learned about Florence Nightingale is there the environment had real pressure on her. And I will never pretend to understand her exact situation. I don't know all of the information, but the story was interesting to me because there was some delay. And after years, she really decided to get in the game, if you will, to put her boots on, another phrase, and get out there and contribute. So, the end of the story is that she is really the mother of modern nursing. And a lot of the systems in healthcare and triage processes that we go through,
Yeah.
even to this day, are attributable in large measure to her. Not all, but much. And she dealt with some of the consequences of going out there and contributing for the rest of her life. She experienced really bad fever and experienced effects from that for the rest of her life when she was helping in the Crimean War.
Mhm.
And it was such a stark example to be learning about this week against the backdrop of the LinkedIn conversation that was happening simultaneously. Is it was a very clear example to me of someone who said, you know what, my life, I want it to be known for contribution. And there's some risk in doing this. I'm moving into darkness. I'm moving into a place that I don't really understand. I'm moving away from the social nest that's been insulated, that has given me distance from some of the problems in the world. Something like 80% more men were casualties of disease than actual battle wounds during this time. And so she went into some environments that we can scarcely imagine. If you can think of what the barracks must have been like in the mid 19th century,
Yeah.
not a fun place to be. So I just wanted to point that out. I thought it was an interesting story, something that I learned this week that really hit me. This woman gave up a lot to go and contribute. And I think it's fair to say that her life and service was a net positive,
Yeah.
as we talked about.
Junior, there's another very important lesson that I think we can learn from Florence Nightingale's life, and that's this. You cannot discover all of your gifts and talents unless you're willing to go out and contribute. It's the process of contribution that reveals those gifts and talents. So take Florence Nightingale, for example. Based on what I read years ago, and I can't remember the numbers, but she reduced mortality rates in the hospitals by double digits. She never would have known that she was gifted, that she was kind of a process and systems genius. And she set up basically the protocols which have evolved into modern triage practice. She never would have known any of that about herself
Mm,
or developed that about herself had were she not willing to go out and contribute and stretch.
yeah.
And so if you live a life of consumption, you will never know your gifts and talents and your abilities. They will remain hidden, they will remain secret and undiscovered. And so you just won't reach your potential. So think about that distinction because, here she was in an aristocrat in England, living a life of leisure with her family, and they probably didn't want her to do that. And then
Yeah, they
finally she said,
explicitly
"Nope,
didn't.
I'm going." And look at the contribution she was able to make, and look at how she was able to discover who she really was.
Yeah.
So when you talk about identity formation, it comes in contribution way more than consumption.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
something we need to think about.
So, the way that this fits in to psychological safety, which you hear us talk about a lot as an overarching umbrella to these types of conversations. So, this fits in stage 3, contributor safety. Can I make a difference? Can I create value? And so that's something that not only we need to own as individuals to get out there and use our talents and skills to create positive impact, but we need to create environments for those around us in which they can do that very thing. Believe it or not, there are many things out there that stifle contribution. It happens all the time. So you hear us talk a lot about challenger safety, but that's stage 4. And it's fairly obvious or easy to point out things that would discourage challenging. But there are things that discourage even contribution, aren't
Yeah.
there, Tim?
Oh yeah, there are. And
Yeah.
so it's another illustration of why people don't try things.
Yeah.
Why don't they try things when they want to try? Inside, they want to try something, they want to give it a go,
Yep.
but they don't because
Yep.
they're worried about the reaction of others. They're worried about embarrassment. They're worried about being marginalized. They're worried about being punished in some way. What a tragedy
Yeah.
to not go for it because of uh, peer pressure or repercussions coming from the environment. That's a
Yep.
tragedy.
It is. So I want to go back and show this slide one more time as we wrap up. So for those of you just joining us, these are the results of the poll on LinkedIn. In life generally, do you find more personal satisfaction in contribution or consumption? And it was overwhelmingly in contribution. So as you approach the weekend, think about this concept and analyze your life. Be introspective. Am I contributing? Am I consuming? What's my personal ratio? Am I oriented toward value creation in whatever it is that I'm engaged in? It could be as simple as a one on one conversation that seems just casual, but all those things add up, all those things compound, and pretty soon these patterns will emerge. And everyone has their own ratio, and we want to peg it out as far as we can toward contribution. And while it's easy to say that that's what most satisfies us, it's very difficult to live our lives in line with that sort of ratio, but we should be constantly striving to do that. So, thank you for joining us in today's LinkedIn Live. And I guess we're on YouTube. I keep saying that. We're on YouTube and Facebook as well. So, Leader Factor Live. If you want to learn more about stage 3 contributor safety, we highly encourage that you read the book, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. That's where a lot of this content comes from. And with saying that, we want to recognize a member of the community today, Patsy McFadden Choate. She's been a wonderful supporter of the content
Patsy.
really since its inception. She left
Yeah.
a wonderful review for us that I want to share with you. This book has the potential to transform your workplace, community group, or family into a great place to spend your time and energy. Understanding the 4 stages and what happens in the work culture when you get this right more than pays for the cost of the book. There are also accompanying free online tools and videos to help deepen your understanding. Highly recommend this book to anyone interested in making your organization better. So, Patsy, thank you so much for your kind words. If you haven't had the opportunity to check out the book, please do. Some of those free resources that Patsy mentioned are on the website, such as the What is Psychological Safety ebook. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, please do. And again, the webinars are starting back up again. So that registration will go live fairly soon. You'll be made aware during the newsletter or on the newsletter that will come out on Wednesday. There will be posts on LinkedIn. If you stay apprised with what we're doing, you will absolutely have an opportunity to register for that. We'll be pushing that pretty soon. Okay, that is it. Register for the webinar when it comes out. focus on contribution, and have a wonderful weekend. Tim, anything else?
No, that's fantastic. Contribute, contribute, contribute.
All right. Thank you, everybody,
Thanks.
for tuning in. Bye bye.
Take care.